He's just like you and me. Well, sort of. He lives in a metropolitan area. He recognized he had a skill set, and he brought a hustle. What set him apart in my mind is, well, he recognized a need and he chose to do something about it. He epitomizes the concept of doing the research, finding the gap, creating a system, and deploying his resources to deliver a profitable, scalable, and sustainable model. I'm going to ask him about it. My guest on Thinc Underground is Bill Dow, CEO of Skedaddle Humane Wildlife Control. Bill, welcome underground.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Underground, let's talk some rats, some raccoons, some skunks, some bats, lots of stuff talking the underground.
This is Thinc Underground. Insightful and intelligent conversation with entrepreneurial giants, impact leaders, and titans. Coming up next on Thinc Underground.
Well, thanks for joining me, and I've been looking forward to this for a little while now. I have done a little bit of homework on you, enough to make me interested, to get to know you, to get to know what you're doing, your organization, to want to learn more about some of your philosophies, why you have a place in this market, why your brand has a place in this market. But then also, I really want to discuss with you how you and why you decided to turn that into something that really you could scale. And Bill, to put things into perspective, our audience typically who's tuning into this podcast is somebody who is looking for something. They're looking for something beyond the convention, beyond the norm, beyond what sort of society expects us to do during our time in our working and productive revenue generating years. And they're looking for something a little bit different. Now, here you come right out of the blue. I've had the pleasure of speaking to a variety of guests in a variety of different segments, none of them that are dealing with infestation, rodents, rats, bats, and anything like that. But actually, it makes complete sense, and I had to bring you on this show. So let's get right into it. I was reading a little bit about your bio. We're talking about into the 80s, I believe it was. And there's something about you living in your community, but you've always had a soft spot for the humane treatment of wildlife and animals. But really, take it from there about how you got the concept of starting Skedaddle and really what you were doing before you started to scale the model.
Sure. I started Skedaddle way back in 1989. So we're in our 34th year of doing this. And, I grew up with cats and dogs and pets and what have you. And, living in Hamilton, Ontario, we have a Niagara escarpment that cuts our city in half. So, I thought, well, there's got to be animals here. So we started it here and we were successful in Hamilton. And then I went anything within an hour's radius, Niagara region, Kitchener, Cambridge, Guelph. We were successful. And then I expanded into Ottawa. I used to play major junior hockey for the Ottawa 67. So, Ottawa's got the green belt there. They've got the Ottawa River. Lo and behold, I was successful there. And then on a whim, let's go to Montreal. Didn't speak a word of French, and it was successful in Montreal. So basically every single city we've gone into, we've been successful. I then started franchising. I had enough on my plate on these founder locations. So now we have 35 franchise locations across Canada and the US, looking to expand more. And it's been a great ride. There's never a dull day, always interested in dealing with the public. And now, given this opportunity for entrepreneurs, or as you said, someone who's looking for something totally different, no one grows up and says, I want to be a raccoon catcher, let alone what? I can make money at this. There's a living, there's a profitable. So putting in the systems in place to allow other people to be successful, that great work-life balance. That's what really is driving me now as we go into the franchising aspect.
So, Bill, let me be very careful how I say this, certainly not to offend you, but go with me on this. In my 52 years on the planet, I'm one of these guys who is thinking, I keep reading the news, I keep reading these fascinating biographies or listening to these podcasts or watching people, in my peer circle or group. And I'm looking at all these phenomenal people who have somehow landed on that amazing idea, that new idea. And I think to myself, what's wrong with me? Am I dumb? Like, why didn't I think of that idea? Why couldn't I come up with that idea? And you and I are talking. We're introduced, And I'm listening to your story, and I'm really taking a look at your story, and I'm going, it's so simple. Like it's so not rocket science, but you've made it, and you landed on something that I think was actually more valuable. I think you recognized that element that was more logical, more viable, more just what am I looking for? I'm looking for a word that wasn't rocket science, that nobody else had actually bothered to build a system around.
Right, exactly. Here at Skedaddle, we do something totally unique. When I first got into this, people think that if I see a raccoon on my roof or a skunk under my deck, that's the only animal in the entire city. That's the furthest from the truth. In a square mile, square kilometer, 2-block radius, what have you, studies have shown there's anywhere from 15 to 50 raccoons, probably the same amount of skunks and probably hundreds of squirrels. So, that we don't trap and relocate animals. There's been studies out there that say 70% of relocated animals die. So here at Skedaddle, we're focusing on animal proofing the structure. Once we get them out, we keep the family unit together. We don't hurt or harm them, get the babies, reunite the mother with the babies, and then we animal proof that structure and give the homeowner a lifetime guarantee. So we have to do it right the first time. Otherwise, it's on our buck to come back and solve it again. And so putting these systems in place and the marketing, this is allowing us to grow and be the dominant player, not only in Canada, but as we focus on the U.S. expansion, soon to be the dominant player in the U.S. as well.
So one of the things that you identified, which made this model scalable, first of all, for some reason, you're one of, if not the only known entity across North America that has built this model. I'm sure there are other people. I know that there are other independent operators, but you are the brand that is recognized, or the preferred brand across North America, from what my research has shown me. What I'm interested, though, in is the fact that you've found something that is duplicatable. It is a common challenge, or a common nuisance, or a common, however, because listen, you have the attitude around humane performance of service, but to the homeowner, there are a lot of people who might take a different emotional sort of approach to it, where it's a nuisance, or where there's a concern, or whether there's fear or something along those lines. But you've created this system that is duplicatable across literally every single municipality, large or small. But let's get back into the core business that you've been talking about so far. In order to scale the model, you said it earlier yourself. Nobody wakes up one day, in high school or college or whatever, it says, I want to be a raccoon chaser or a trapper, etc. So tell me, who does want to do that? Who's the ideal candidate? Our audience typically is looking for a business model, something that's proven. You mentioned the word entrepreneurship earlier. Certainly that is a big buzzword out there, but not everybody's built for entrepreneurship. And in order to be successful as an entrepreneur, you've got to have some of the foundational or fundamental elements to ensure that your model is going to be successful. Let's talk about that before we release the punchline of that other thing that you were talking about, just for a minute. How did you turn, and what is it about what Skedaddle's doing that has turned one truck into dozens of trucks across dozens of regions and municipalities across North America at this point? What is it that you were able to bring that most people, let's talk about whether you're a mechanic or a gas technician or a veterinarian or whatever it might be, great at being self-employed, wakes up in the morning, has the discipline, goes out and does a job, has great customer service, but hasn't figured out how to scale. What is it that you figured out and that your team brought to the table to make this scalable and ensure relative, obviously there's an asterisk in there in individual performance, but ensure the success of your operators and franchisees?
It's the systems that we put in place and the marketing. When our new franchisee comes on board, our first focus with him or her is to get them out of the service vehicle, working on the business as opposed to in the business, and that, some people might get to 2 trucks or 3 trucks, but when you start getting more staff and supervisors and managers in place, we have all those systems in place. We have the corporate call center to answer calls, because this isn't a 9 to 5 time when people phone. We'll get called at 3 a.m. People have a bat flying around the middle of their bedroom, waking them up, or Sunday at 6 o'clock at night. So we have a professional call center to take those calls, because when people phone us, they have a problem and they're ready to spend money. So we want to be the company of choice for them. So putting all these systems in place so that we can have entrepreneurs, whether they're, be a semi-absentee, where they put in a manager in place, similar to what we've done in Toronto, where, even though we're an hour outside of Toronto and Hamilton, it was always that big city. We want to go in there with 1 truck, 2 trucks. We hire a general manager, we hire a manager. We're up to 18 service vehicles right now after 5 years in business. Scaling it that way by these managers and supervisors and general managers working on the business and growing it, versus, hiring the people that are going to get out there and get the animals out, and more importantly, keep them out.
So you're not necessarily looking for, and feel free to correct me, but I'm going to use the word owner operator, where someone's buying a franchise or a license and then they are the technician. You're actually bringing on and nurturing business owners to expand an area, a territory, or region, and they are in turn hiring the technicians to go out and do the field work. Something along those lines, ultimately?
Right. When they're, our typical territory size for franchise is 500,000 people. So, yes, we are looking for, say someone wants Calgary. Calgary might be 5 or 6 territories. We want someone to come in and buy the entire city, own the entire city, and put those managers in place and run it remotely or semi-absentee. Something like I've done for over 30 years with my Ottawa operation, my Montreal operation. We're 5-7 hours away. And those are, I've got that system in place so that technology is a big help, but, those are the big geographical and population bases that we want to tackle. Now, having said that, we still have owner operators as well. Smaller communities, maybe say a Windsor, Ontario, or a city with, say, 300,000 people or even 200,000 people. That can be an owner operator, which can still, get the different service vehicles for different revenue streams that we have. We won't talk about that last one that we want to get into, where they can make a great living. Maybe they can do the sales, and they could have technicians doing the work. But they can still be that owner operator if that's what they decide to do. But for bigger metropolitan areas or larger population bases, yes, we want that entrepreneur who wants to be kind of hands off or semi-absentee and have people run it for him.
Got it. So I'm going to poke the bear a little bit. I'm going to say, you don't have to agree with me. First of all, you nail a couple of things when I'm looking at your model. I'm looking at your brand, et cetera. First and foremost, green, environmentally friendly, green planet, that kind of thing. I don't know if that's happens to be a coincidence or not. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that was very strategic. You also nail really the ESG, and jury's out a little bit on ESG, environmental, social governance, that kind of thing, but you're doing something that is caring, it's humane, it hits the right chords with people. Okay. But aside from that, this is what I'm saying. There's nothing sexy about what you're doing. I mean, your people are going out there, they're crawling into attic spaces, they're dealing with rodents, they're dealing with infestation. It's not sexy. But actually, some of the greatest business coaches and business minds out there would say, if you're dealing with an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter which segment or market you put them in. If they know what they're doing, they'll make a successful go of that operation. So talk to me about who you look for in terms of surrounding yourself, both on your corporate management team, but also as actual licensees and franchisees of your model. Who are you looking for to make sure it's the right person that you're bringing on board to execute that model?
Right. We've made mistakes. Any entrepreneur has, you learn from your mistakes, you correct them, and you move forward. So, we want people that are going to come in and follow the system. You don't need to be reinventing the wheel. We've done that. We've made our mistakes, but we like people coming who's got that creative mind to say, hey, Bill, have you ever thought of something like this? Well, yeah, that's a great idea. Let me take that to my management team. We'll test it. We'll research it. And then we'll bring it out to the entire system. Or, you know what? Yeah, we tried that. Didn't really work out. Let's, stay the course. So whether it's franchisees that we're looking to award new franchise to, or technician assistants that are, the entry level position, we say we hire attitude and train the skills. You come in with a good attitude, you're going to be successful in this business, whether you're a technician working your way up to a senior technician, a supervisor, to a manager, or a franchisee who's coming in and going to build that team below him to allow him to have that better work-life balance and be a successful entrepreneur.
So on your corporate team, though, or excuse me, maybe I got this wrong. I think you said you sort of have the Toronto region as one of your territories or jurisdictions that you look out for yourself. But there's a lady on one of your videos who really talked about a few things. One being the fiscal viability and all the systems that you have in place that were really some things that she was enthusiastic about. But the other thing that she mentioned, I thought that was really quite notable, and it shouldn't come as a surprise, but I think it actually does in reality. And that was her talking about the effort that is put into building these really strategic relationships with other partners in the community, most notably the Humane Society, SPCA, other types of community service providers out there. And actually, they're a great revenue source. They're a lead source for you. Talk to me about how these relationships get built. Who's building them? Are I take it your franchisees have got to get into the idea of building them. And again, business doesn't come naturally to everybody. So how are you training and getting that buy-in from your franchisees about getting them out of the service vehicle and into the relationship building business?
Yeah, we've always been big in terms of helping out in the local community, whether it be sponsoring sports teams or events. But SPCAs, humane societies, wildlife rehabilitators, those are people that have the same philosophy, humane, ethical treatment of animals that we have. And this is something over 30 years ago when I walked in as a young kid saying, what are you guys doing renting traps? I've just been up in an attic rescuing baby animals that were suckling on insulation and starving to death because that homeowner got a live trap, which was supposedly humane, from a humane society. And now there's these baby orphans that we need someone to take care of them. So, it took a lot of visits and explanations. And, now we can go into any new territory and say, we have all these relationships with all these humane societies and basically every single market we service. We're here to help you, whether we participate in their dog walks or their fundraising events, that we can help them. So it's having those people on my senior team or franchisees buy into the concept that, here's some little steps you need to take. And, not all marketing costs money. We have a whole document we give to our franchise owners saying, here's some simple steps that you can take to increase lead gen, increase revenue for you, and build the name in the community. It's, as you said, the word skedaddle, it's I can't take credit for that. We needed a unique, different name. We went to a boutique marketing company who just hit it out of the park because, now people look at the shirt and say, Skedaddle. My grandmother used to say that to me. That's a great name. And it just kind of rolls around the back of your head.
Let's get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Scoot, scram, skedaddle. So it's been a fun journey. Yeah.
I love it. You've got some interesting things as your core philosophies. Your company has a kindness philosophy and an attitude around coexistence. It's not about getting rid of this pest. I mean, I understand that there are pests, but it's about coexistence. And one of the things I notice, and I keep hearing this, is that, it's one thing to safely remove the animal or the rodent, the pest, whatever it is, from the premises. But you're not actually in the trap and relocate business. You're in the let's give you your home back business and then repair the home. And so there's a side of your business that's actually kind of in the renovation business. And it just so happens that the renovation was needed anyway. The animal found its way inside the house, but it's not the animal. It's the lack of repair and maintenance of your home. And that's really the kind of the business that you're in.
Exactly. We're in the home renovation repair business. all these animals are opportunistic. They get a little crack or crevice, they're going to chew, rip, tear, and gain access into your attic, your chimney, your deck, your shed, you name it. So, most of our revenue is generated by animal proofing that structure. And, that's the problem. As I said, animals are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. If it's raining out, you don't go out and do a rain dance, stop the rain. If you have a leak in your roof, you're going to get up and put something over that roof to stop the rain from coming in. Same with animals. You can't wave a magic wand and have all the squirrels disappear out of your city. The secret to all wildlife removal is to animal proof the home.
So one of the things that I was reading, though, is it's bat season. Now, to put a bit of a timestamp on this, we're talking about summer. It's bat season. Bats are those things that everybody fears about, from the fairy tales to the nightmares, the movies, whatever it may be. They've been made famous. Talk to some people and they'll say they're the cutest little thing that ever happened. Other people will say, look at this bite mark I got. But tell me about bat season, because that's actually your biggest source of revenue, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. August is typically a huge revenue month for us because bats get an opening the size of a dime on a home. Any crack or crevice, typically where the brick or the siding meets the soffit or the overhang, they squeezed in. And we have to seal up the entire house to do that. So these are some big ticket items, which could be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 jobs. So a lot of sealing up. You have to be very thorough, but our systems and training, will teach the franchisee how to do this, do it successfully. And everybody loses their mind on bats. This is where, in my early days, I would work the night shift. I'd do 3 or 4, what we call emergency calls, where a homeowner would phone us at 2, 3, 5 in the morning, and bats flying around, get out here, get it out, and then work the entire next day. So, people, the media portrays these things as they're going to, suck your blood and what have you. They are very beneficial for the environment. You just don't want them living in your attic. There's a lot of diseases associated with their droppings. They have been known, if they're rabid, to bite people. The end result is death if it's rabid. So you have to send it for testing. So there is a lot of health concerns with bats, and you don't want them in your attic with you.
And your operators and technicians are trained in all of this elements around the testing and obviously, one, knowing how to protect themselves, but two, the recommendations around if there is a bat identified about sending for testing, that kind of thing. You said you can walk into your model with absolutely no experience, but the right attitude, and you can train from the ground up.
Exactly. I've been doing that for 34 years. I started this, I hired my first technician. He didn't know what he's doing. Here, let me train you. So we've been training staff for over 30 years. And now it's just training franchisees. And nowadays, everything can be online. They do courses before they come to their week of training. When they purchase a franchise, they spend a week with us at corporate head office, and then off they go to the running. We'll go down and visit them after, a few weeks or a month or so, just to kind of get the feel for the land. Our most recent franchisee, he bought 2 territories just out of Washington, D.C. and Maryland. 2 weeks he's been in business, and he's just over $13,000 in sales. So, he's probably looking at a $20,000 a month. His budget, when he set his budget and started, he thought, $5,000 in sales for his first month. So he's going to knock this out of the park in his first month. So we're really excited with his results so far.
Well, thank you for the segue in that, because that's exactly what I was going to ask you about. There are some people who decide, you know what, I don't care what it is. I just want to make money. There are other people who say, money's not everything. I want to be happy. I want to be able to look myself in the mirror. You've got an interesting formula here that obviously is something that is demand. You mentioned it. I'll put the words in your mouth a little bit. It's like a 911 call. Nobody's looking forward to it. You're not getting called because people like you and want to get to meet you. They're having a moment. They're having a problem. They want you to fix it. Therein lies some opportunity, though, because they're going to pay for it. They're going to pay for the peace of mind. They're going to pay for the outcome. And I'm not going to begrudge you making a little bit of money here. Obviously, though, you got to seal an entire house. That's a bit of an operation. You talked earlier about some of the tasks or service calls that you're going to get might take 2 people 6 to 8 hours to handle the piece of business. What is it looking like for someone who's going to do a bat recovery call?
Yeah, a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 job will typically take 1, maybe 2 technicians 6 to 8 hours. So the revenue and the profitability in our jobs it's fairly large. But once again, that's all trained with our systems. And now do they sometimes evade us and we have to go back and figure out what's going on? Yes, that's part of the business. But we have a whole support team. I have my senior management team, guys that have been with me, 20 years, over 20 years. So we have over 150 years experience when you look at my senior team that are there to help. There's not much we haven't seen. We're probably visiting over 150 homes a day. So that's a lot of interactions with wildlife, a lot of interactions with homeowners, a lot of marketing going on with these trucks driving around the streets. So, it's just a business that just keeps growing and growing. And, not myself, not coming from a business background, playing hockey professionally, and then getting into this, I just knew about customer service. I'm a big believer in customer service. It's all about customer service. People will pay more if they know peace of mind and that they're going to have a great customer experience and they have a guarantee, a lifetime guarantee. I don't think there's not a lot of business out there that give you a lifetime guarantee on doing work. So, people do pay more. And a lot of times we beat our competitors, even though we're more expensive, because they trust us. We're a professional looking company and, we have the experience and the knowledge to do the job right.
Listen, I'm going to give our audience a bit of a disclaimer. I did not coach you on any of this, but it's like you're giving me perfect segues here. So I'm going to dive into that next segue right now. You mentioned earlier that you actually look at yourselves as a marketing company that just happens to be in safe, humane handling and pest control, et cetera, that kind of thing. I probably fudged that a little bit, but you know where I'm going with that. Well, here's the thing. You did talk about trust. You talk about the relationships that get built, a household name or a recognized name built on trust. And the majority of your income, your revenue model might take place from spring through fall. And then suddenly you've got this gap and you've got these franchisees that got a little bit of overhead. Trucks aren't cheap, ladders aren't cheap. Nobody wants to lay people off necessarily for the winter. I know that there are some industries, notably the pool industry or something like that, where they've seen seasonal labor and finding good labor, finding good help is not easy. Roofing industries are struggling with that. So many industries are struggling with that. And you found a way to actually leverage what you already had and keep your model rolling through the winter months. Tell me about that. Let it out of the bag. Go ahead.
Right, exactly. I would lay people off in the winter time, and as you said, it's so hard to get people trained back to your company culture and get them hitting the road running when babies arrive in springtime. So as we got into the fall season, I figured out we had trucks, we had ladders. Why not get into Christmas decorating? And a lot of people say, what? How do you go from catching raccoons and keeping ants out of my house to putting up Christmas lights? But the trucks are there, the ladders are there. My team, my staff, my franchise are used to being up and down ladders and tying off in their roofs. And it's just been, there is no downtime. I'll talk to my senior team and say, hey, when the slow season, they're built. There's no slow season. We're now, midway through August, towards the end of August. We've already started our Christmas preparing. We're going to start installing towards the end of September, start of October, and it just keeps getting busier and busier because they can't push Christmas back. As we get demand grows and grows as we get into October, into November, and in the first week of December, and it's a very lucrative business, a very fun business. It's all professionally installed. It looks amazing. It's one of those real feel-good businesses where, some of my staff will take their wives and their kids out and say, here's what I did today. Look how beautiful this house is. Or look how beautiful this tree is. So, it's a real feel-good business. And we have a renewal rate of about 75%. After we've decorated their home or their business, they will renew and do it year after year after year. So we finally have that repeatable revenue versus the wildlife where we're one and done. It's the large ticket number, lifetime guarantee versus, we do a $1,200, a $2,000, a $3,000 Christmas job, and we have that recurring revenue year after year after year. So
I love the way you've thought this through, and our business and our agency, we are all about systems and also about marketing. We happen to be a marketing company as well, and that's the interesting thing at our mindset. It's around a successful model. It's a model that has to have a net profit at the end of the day that meets the requirements that we need, that we're looking for. But what's really nice about this, and what I'm hearing about it, is that, well, first of all, you've got the human resources already in place. You've got the right mindset. And again, you got the wrong person. It doesn't matter what you try to get them to do. They're the wrong person. But you got the right person. It doesn't matter what you get them to do. You got the right person, right? So you've got that. You've got the capital, someone to go around and start a Christmas tree decorating company from scratch, buying trucks, ladders, finding the right people, and it's a short window of opportunity. That's an unlikely approach to take to be successful, but you've actually found a way to repurpose what you've already got, keep the method going, keep the system going. The other side of it is, though, you've already got a database of customers that know your reputation that you can market to. And that to me is phenomenal.
Exactly. The Christmas business isn't for everybody. This is more higher income people who have the beautiful home, the nice cars in the driveway. They're not going to get up on the roof to put up their lights. They want their house looking stunning. And, once you do one, then you start getting the entire street. And, we have fun with it. We put a little Santa hat on the raccoon head in our trucks. We have put the Rudolph nose in the Santa hat and, have a little fun with it. The team puts on the red jerseys or the red shirts, and off we go into Christmas. And, when you see that nice house, maybe you're doing a bat job and it's a beautiful home, that you can kind of cross market. Say, hey, do you know we do Christmas decorating? Or I saw some ants or some spiders on your home. You're worried about that. We can take care of that for you. So, we're selling men in a truck or people in a truck. It's just how we're going to keep that truck busy, day in, day out, 365 days of the year.
Yeah, but I love it. It was said earlier, I think it was by one of your colleagues, to say we're the customer's heroes, basically. And, so you're the hero to get rid of the household penetration of that pest or that rodent, but you're also the one going up on the tree, making Christmas happen, making it a reality, making the neighborhoods beautiful. That's awesome. I have a question for you, and actually I have two questions for you, and that's really what's next. I'll start with that one.
Well, what's next? We want to, we have a number of territories still available in Western Canada, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, BC. We have a few in BC, but lots of territory there. We'd like to get expansion through those areas in Canada, but we're also focusing a lot on the US right now. There's a lot of major US cities there that have, millions of people that we could, plug into our system and off to the races and grow a very profitable business and a very fun business. There's never a dull day, whether you're hanging Christmas lights, chasing out a baby or squirrels or raccoons. Every day is different. Every homeowner is different. It's just a fun, enjoyable business.
Well, I maybe actually just think of one other thing. So I lied to you. I'm going to ask you two more questions. And that really is, this one leads to it. Nobody's going to, find happiness in this part of the conversation, but the world, certainly North America, as we know it, Canada and the US, we're seeing some pretty devastating wildfires, whether that's in Hawaii, whether that's in Western Canada, Western US states. California has also just recently had an earthquake. It was a 5.2 just north of Los Angeles. They've got a storm, like pretty torrential rains that are coming on there. All of these different type of climate-related activities, or arson-related activities for that matter, also mess up the ecosystem. They mess up the habitats for, obviously, the wildlife. Talk to me a little bit about how your company addresses what seems to be a greater frequency of these types of incidents that are either climate or natural disaster or, disaster related, when it comes to disturbing the natural habitat of wildlife and then therefore your market segment that you're taking care of.
Yeah, I think we're still haven't really come across that a lot just yet. Though we do see it when full moon, for example, weird things happen with wildlife during a full moon, whether it be, a raccoon coming down a chimney and opening up the damper and running through the house, or, so that cycle changes wildlife. And, we've been lucky that, any of these cities that have had these issues, we haven't been in those cities yet. And the fact that most of our work is right in urban centers, we're not on the outskirts. We need that population density. Believe it or not, there's more animals in our urban, cities right now than in, more rural areas. So we've been across it.
That just stands to reason, right? That's quite a logical thing. I mean, urban sprawl or urban growth is impacting where they would otherwise be finding a natural habitat, and they're looking for a place to take care of themselves, seek shelter, just like a human would do. And so that makes a lot of sense. I thought I'd ask you, obviously, because it's kind of timely right now. I'll check back with you in the not too distant future, and we'll see how that's impacted your business model, if at all. But I certainly, your argument is quite reasonable that you're tending to business in, like you said, 500,000 population centers. So that makes sense. I will ask you this and I appreciate your time. I want to respect your time, but before I let you go, if you could do one thing to change the world, what would it be?
Educate in regards to animals that are in our cities, and the solution is not to trap them and take them away. They're here to stay, and you're going to create orphans. 70% of relocated animals die. People don't realize that. Everybody thinks, our call center gets over 1,000 phone calls a day, and pretty much every single caller wants that animal trapped and taken away. Get it out of sight, out of mind. Well, if I'm taking it from Toronto to Barrie, I'm making it somebody's problem in Barrie, and vice versa. So the solution is to wildlife proof your home. Just educate people that problem's going to get worse. These animals keep invading our homes. We've had double-digit growth for 30 years. And not having a business background, my business advisor, my accountant say, Bill, this is unheard of. What's going on? Well, I've been very lucky, but educating that they're here to stay. Wildlife proof your home. Don't wait till a problem. Get somebody out there, call Skedaddle, and wildlife proof your home. Prevent massive damage to your biggest investment of your life, your home.
Bill Dow, CEO of Skedaddle Humane Wildlife Control. You managed to find a model and a market sector that you could build that is scalable, duplicatable, create a system, franchise it, that has a need, that does good for the community, that does good for the natural habitat, the wildlife. It's a feel-good business. And I think you nailed it. I think you found the perfect formula there. I want to thank you very much for sharing your knowledge, your wealth of knowledge, and your time with me on Thinc Underground. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you. It's been fun. I appreciate it.
Thinc Underground is a Siva Creative Incorporated production, written and hosted by R.F. Khan, produced by Brett Glover, with production assistance by Samantha Bowman, Cody Fitzgerald, William Gibson. Music courtesy 1M1 Music, directed by R.F. Khan. Executive producers Mallory Steele and R.F. Khan. Created by Mallory Steele.